Hey guys, this is another 8th grade American history video with Coach Goodrich on my YouTube channel. This is going to be Unit 3, Part 3, which deals with the American Revolution. Part 3 focuses on getting towards the end of the fighting and the war leading up to the Treaty of Paris. So the war changed. Up until this point, the colonists are holding on by a thread. They are really having to be creative in their fighting tactics, but they cannot line up and win a straight fight against the British. There's too many soldiers, or too well armed, too well disciplined. So let's get into some of the things that are going to help turn the tide in our favor. British commanders General Howe and Burgoyne were defeated at the Battle of Saratoga in upstate New York by the American General Horatio Gates. This victory led to France signing a treaty of alliance with the Americans, which brings soldiers, food, and weapons, and other supplies. Benjamin Franklin was instrumental in negotiating the treaty, as well as the French military leader, the Marquis de Lafayette. Major turning point of the war, getting French aid here. And then Valley Forge in Pennsylvania, one of Washington's winter camps. 22 miles away from British-held Philadelphia. You're going to have 10 to 12,000 American soldiers there. 2,000 would never leave. 4,000 would be too sick or wounded to fight, and 2,000 more would desert. Smallpox epidemic is wet and damp. You have other diseases. You lack of food. You have people resorting to eating what are called fire cakes, which are bits of dough and sometimes sawdust or leather that are cooked on rocks next to a fire just to have something to eat. But this is the American way. We're the underdog. Another key turning point was the arrival of General Friedrich von Steuben, a German soldier, military commander, came to America to volunteer his services to Washington, the Continental Army, and he's going to instruct them in drill and discipline to make them, in effect, more European, more British in their fighting style. And while they would lose over half of their number at Valley Forge, the remaining American soldiers would come out ready to fight in a way that the British had not seen. The British, sensing this, shift their plans to go after the more loyalist, more Tory southern colonies from 1778 to 1780. First, a huge success by the British commanders, but the American forces would soon be bolstered by the arrival of Major General Nathaniel Greene, pictured above, sometimes known as the George Washington of the South. It's going to be fought over 13 battles. The British were going after divide and conquer, splitting their troops up, while the Americans are going to favor what is known as a guerrilla warfare or Indian warfare style. And you guys will get a video of what that looks like from the movie The Patriot. But small groups of hit-and-run soldiers, very much like what they learned from Indian fighting in the past, what we talked about in the past. Three of the biggest and last battles in the southern colonies were the Battle of Cowpens, the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, and the Battle of Charleston. Battle of Cowpens specifically, which was the major inspiration for the last battle in the movie The Patriot, was the decisive victory by the Continental Army forces under Brigadier General Daniel Morgan. Hope you didn't miss that. And you guys will get a look at that here. Finally, after being driven out of the Carolinas by Daniel Morgan and Nathaniel Greene, George Washington and the Marquis de Lafayette and Rochambeau move, and the French allies, especially the French Navy, led by General de Grasse, move from the north down south to pin the British soldiers at Yorktown, which is pictured here, and trap them by sea. This is the Battle of Yorktown, Virginia. The British go there expecting that they're going to be picked up by the British fleet. However, the British fleet arrives and is pushed away by the French and American forces that have already gathered there. The British were led for the majority of the war by their Lord Cornwallis here. Foundation of the Purple Heart with George Washington on it. And after being trapped at Yorktown for several weeks, Cornwallis finally surrenders at Yorktown on October 19th, 1781. So how did the Americans defeat the most powerful country in the world? The British were fighting too many wars around the world. Not only are they now fighting the French, they're also fighting the Spanish, and they're not just fighting them in Americas, they're fighting in the Caribbean, they're fighting in Canada, they're fighting back in Europe. They're spread far too thin. British are fighting on foreign territory. For the Americans, that's home. You have American leadership, not necessarily in military strategy, but in strength of character. I think George Washington, and just belief in yourself, belief in your cause. I think George Washington perfectly emphasizes that. You have poor British strategy, such as letting the rebels gather at Valley Forge and being pinned down at Yorktown. The Hessian soldiers and other mercenaries did not care about the British cause. They were mercenaries. They only wanted to get paid. Of course, the American cause, independence. Finally, and probably the most important, number 7, the French came to our aid. And then, of course, number 8, your guerrilla warfare and Indian fighting, not just straight fighting. And then let's talk about the Treaty of Paris, which was not signed until almost 2 years later. So the war ends in 1781. The Treaty of Paris is not signed until 1783. So the 3 main clauses for independence are for the Treaty of Paris. The peace treaty that finally acknowledges that Great Britain lost and the United States won. Independence for the United States, and you see what that would have looked like here. All lands between the Appalachian Mountains, which run here, and the Mississippi River, which is here, and from the Great Lakes in the north, all the way down to the top of Florida, belong now to the United States. And they also were guaranteed fishing rights in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is up north, and off the coast into Newfoundland, so that would have been over here if we could see that far. So those are 3 major parts of the treaty, and we see the signatures here: John Adams, Ben Franklin, and John Jay, and the unfinished portrait, which took place at the surrender. You see Ben Franklin, John Adams, but it was unfinished because the British were so embarrassed, far too proud, that they left in the middle of the portrait because they were so embarrassed of losing. The legacy of George Washington said about him: first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. He could have been proclaimed king of the United States if he'd wanted that, but that's not what he was about. And then my high school history coach illegally took this picture at Mount Vernon in January of 2008. Those are George Washington's famous false teeth. So make sure you brush your teeth. Like Stuart Little. Mini quiz. Alright guys, so you can answer this on your own paper, on your notes, but make sure you also do it online because that's where you're going to get your grade. Who was chosen as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army? Who was in the group that was chosen to write the Declaration of Independence? All 5 of them. Who wrote the pamphlet Common Sense? What was the turning point of the war in terms of the battle? Who led the French forces at the end of the American Revolution? Draw that with the slide on Washington at Yorktown. And then what treaty formally ended the war? Alright, guys, looking forward to discussing this with you here very soon. And good luck on your mini quiz.